The topic that we are going to look at now is something that I notice many developers not understand, like which is a very basic thing for a front-end developer to understand, but I see many of them have no idea about the difference between the block element, inline element, and inline block element. Now we'll see that. We already saw a gist of it, or even a few details along in the HTML session, but we'll see in detail how this block and the inline element differs. Now, when I say block element, like say the div, we have a div tag, a block element. Okay, so this is what you see. Now, I always tell you that if you really want to understand the scope or the space of an element, try to fix a border. So I'm gonna fix a border with this class. Again, a bad name for class. Solid black. Let's save this and refresh. So if you see, by default, the div gets a width and a height. You know what that width and a height is? The width is pretty much 100%. So when you say width is 100%, when you say the width is 100%, it means that width according to its container. The container is body. So body is, this is the body's width. So 100% of body, take 100% of body is what it means. Now, you know, it always has a high width. Now height is pretty much dependent on the text. Let me add some text. So the height is, I copied it to a different div. The height is adjusted to the text. The same behavior can't be expected with the inline element. Let me give the border again to the inline element. Let me remove this. No matter whether you give the width or not, the class and the div obviously takes complete horizontal space. It always takes 100%. Now we look at span. I didn't give span border. I'm giving the border now. If you look at it, the width of the span is just to the content. So the content decides what the width of the span is. Height is obviously based on the content, like how the div behaves. See what happens. The span element, it broke into 5. Now still it is one span element. You will see when you inspect, still one span element, but the span element never takes a horizontal block space. That is why you see multiple borders. So for better understanding, I'll just keep it to a single border. Now a div by default gets a width. It also gets some padding, very minimal padding, like say 0.5 pixel or something. And it also gets some margin. If you see, there is a bit of a space in the top. So that's there. But when it comes to a span element never gets a width or margin or a padding. Both both react to the height of the element based on its content. But by default, the div gets width, margin and padding, whereas the span element or the inline element doesn't get it. Now, if you think of uh, a div element, right now we'll have a h1 tag. I'll just give class block class. Now you might be wondering, how can I give a block class? Div and h1 have a same class, but if you look at the properties, all I have mentioned is this border. So h1 and div can have that. That wouldn't be a problem. So if you see, there is some sort of padding and margin in the top. So considering this, that's the main difference. So the div takes the whole width, whereas span takes only based on the content, and the width has by default margin and padding, whereas span doesn't has. When I say it takes the whole width, it obviously means that every div element, even the h1 element, they get a fixed width, which is the 100%. You can change the width though. Now I could also change the width, the block class. The width is changed. So you could do that with the block element. Now block elements, a few of the block elements are the div element, the h1 to h6 tag, the paragraph tag, form tag, header, footer, section. And then for the inline elements, the quite popular one is the span, anchor and image. But there are some more inline elements. We'll see that in some moment. Now what happens if I give a width to the inline class? Nothing happened. What happens if I give a height? Nothing happened. So it pretty much reacts to the content that is given. Now I'll also give some margin to it. Padding to it. Margin and padding is applied, but it doesn't behave as it is supposed to be. So it is not the mistake of the div. So it is the padding and margin. It's not shouldn't be given to a inline element. So to fix that, we have something called inline block. There's so many display properties that we can have, but the one property which helps in this kind of a situation is the inline block. Now what inline block does is it lets you apply width, height, margin and padding to a span element, or I always say span, but I mean the inline element. So when you say display an inline block, it helps you give width, height and margin and padding to a inline element. But if you don't give this to an inline element, it behaves very erratically. Like the width and height is not applied, margin and padding are applied, but it behaves erratically. So that is why you give a display inline and block. Now let's see what happens if we given another span here. I'm saying another span. So you get another span here. Now let me disable this. So span, this another difference between div and span is div after a block. So if after a block, if you have another block, the next block will start right from the beginning. But whereas span, it let you element after the other, but div will always start from the container's leftmost area and it won't let anything on the right side. But span will start anywhere. So this span just started here and this span will also let another span being here. So the inline elements pretty much will allow you to do that. So inline block, when you have an inline block, now inline block allows you to, I mean, it is basically a combination of block elements where it allows these properties. At the same time, the span or the inline element still stays as a inline element as it allows another element after it, and it also can start from anywhere. So that's the beauty of inline block. Now we'll see how these inline blocks could be used in the real world case. Now let me have a span. Beautiful span is what I'm going to name it. Beautiful span. Now to this class, I'm going to say it's a inline block with this 100 pixel, height is 100 pixel. Let's see what happens. So you see that this is being folded to the next line. There's a reason for that. You could notice that only when you give this here. Now this 100 pixel is not enough for all these text. So that is why that, I mean, it was wrapped into the next line. So we'll give a 200 pixel width and a 200 pixel height just to make it a square element. Now this is a square element. Now I'm going to remove this out. So instead of that, let's have a background color. Background color, I'm going to give, let's look for some good ones here. Let there be dark green. So dark green is what you got here. Now let's bring this to the middle. So we could have a padding of 10 pixel. Box sizing, I'm going to make this a border box so that it doesn't keep changing as I change the padding values. So 10 pixel would is not enough. So height is 100 pixel. So why not make the padding as 30 pixels? No, not enough. 50 pixels. Okay, the push from the padding from the top on the right and left is what it is pushing. So the right and left padding alone, I'm going to reduce it to 20 pixel. Let's say it's auto. No, auto doesn't works well in this situation. So 20 pixel at the left and the right is what I'm trying. So let's try a 30 pixel. Can be in the middle a bit more. Yet not in the middle. 40 pixel. Okay, from the top. Oh, so it's 200 pixels, right? So from the top, it will be 90 pixels. So if you see, bought a element in the middle, and why not have a What is it? Text outline or border as 1px solid red. Okay. So what do you feel? I mean, does it looks better? I want to have a Lucida Sans. Looks like this font is a bit bigger, so I'm gonna reduce the padding by 5 pixels. So this is something that you would achieve with inline block.